How's it going, everyone? It seems like the least discussed CHH comes from the West Coast. I understand why, because many of the artists from that area tend to stray wildly from musical trends. There's quite a few wild cards like Propaganda, John Givez, the former members of the Dream Junkies. Oh, and speaking of which, I ended up choosing John Givez as the one we'd be talking about today. I also wanted to take a quick moment and thank everyone for the continual support. Make sure to follow me on Twitter so that you can stay up to date with what I'll be putting up each Friday on YouTube. All that being said, let's get right into it.
Where we can really fly out here, you know what I mean? Really fly.
Alright, so if we want to ask what did John Givez do for CHH, first we have to identify what he did. I think a great starting point would be the absurd improvement he demonstrated. And I'll admit this reason is a bit vague. Any artist can improve, and many do. What makes John special here is the short amount of time he improved within. John's debut album, 4 Seasons, wasn't as bad as far as debuts go. It got mostly positive responses, and he definitely secured himself as an artist to keep an eye on. Yet, at the same time, 4 Seasons wasn't necessarily anything crazy. It felt like John was testing the waters, holding back, and in truth, he was. He actually explains this in an interview with Rapzilla.
Like 4 Seasons, I take it easy. I take it real easy. This album, I'm not taking it easy.
So, it wasn't that 4 Seasons was bad, but it had a more lot to do with how safe of an album it was. By the time Soul Rebel came around in 2015, John had built up quite a massive amount of anticipation for the album. Between features, the Dream Junkies, and John simply being a consistently good artist, people were ravenous for this new album. And boy, it did not disappoint. Soul Rebel was better than anybody could have expected, and I could do a whole video on what made that such a good album. To keep things short though, Soul Rebel was better than 4 Seasons in literally every aspect, and it was better in spades. This type of quality jump is actually hard to find given the short amount of time between the two projects. They weren't just any projects either, these were both full-blown albums, and this is important because it's a lot easier to find quality jumps between EPs and albums rather than 2 whole albums that came out less than 2 years apart. Let that sink in. This was a quality jump that I'm simply unable to find anywhere else under the same time restraint. If you guys can think of an artist who did something similar in the same amount of time, be sure to let me know in the comments. Having said that, I think another interesting aspect is that he was the most consistently amazing feature artist in CHH. Okay, obviously this is a bold statement, but it's not hard to believe. Feature artists are everywhere you look, but there's very few I'd say were truly exceptional. In secular hip-hop, artists like Nate Dogg and 2 Chainz are praised for this sort of ability, but unfortunately for CHH, it's still a budding industry, and thus it hasn't established many iconic figures. Personally, I've been rolling with CHH for several years now, and I can say that John Givez is the most consistently excellent feature artist I've seen yet. Quality over quantity is a valuable standard, but sometimes quantity can still be impressive. John Givez has been a featured artist on over 30 projects, and this is purely what's available for purchase on iTunes. If you were to add in free project features via Rapzilla, the true total would be staggering. The incredible thing is that despite all of these features, John didn't throw his talent around willy-nilly. He seemed to work with artists he saw potential in, and generously offered his talents to help them make a better project overall. And there's also a pattern when you look at his features. Montel's Fish As We Walk Into Forever was great, and John's feature was almost flawless. Ty Brazel's Cloud9 Raps was perhaps the best mixtape of 2015, and John's excellent verse was on the most popular and well-liked song from that mixtape. Natalie Lauren's Cliff Notes was a beautiful mixture of soundscapes, and of course, John featured on one of the best songs from it. Jahan's Tower Ivory was an absurdly underrated album from 2015, and John Givez naturally appeared on one of the most well-loved songs from the album. John's reason for success as a feature artist is that he has an uncanny ability to understand what the other artist is intending, both sonically and lyrically. He never steals the show, but still manages to bring verses or hooks that are just as lovable as what everyone else on the song presents. John chooses to mesh rather than to outshine, and because of that, he highlights elements of the song that are great and makes them amazing. As a feature artist, John Givez is equivalent to the black spots on a leopard. He's the breezy grass that a lion crouches in to watch its prey. He's the whimsical ocean that carefully conceals a great white shark. In every instance, John is the manifestation of nature that allows a creature to excel in what it does. That's really the best way to put it. He generously provided natural and complementary coverage to any artist he worked with, and that's truly a hard to come by ability. But let's go further and look at another aspect. John Givez was a master of the memory lane storytelling method. The great thing with hip-hop is that it's ultimately an art, and thus there are many aspects and elements of it. One element is storytelling, and while it's not necessary to make good music, as a handful of newer artists are proving, it can make a musical experience much more engrossing. CHH thankfully has its fair share of storytellers. To list a few, we have Aha Gazelle, Shai Lin, Propaganda, KB, The New Black, and John Givez finds himself amongst this list. However, John is notable in that he excels in the memory lane technique. He uses actual explicit memories of his life to paint a picture for the listener. From the start of Soul Rebel, John could have said growing up was rough for him. He never directly stated it though, instead cluing us in on various tracks. By the end of the album, it was clear that John had a tough life, and a great deal of that trouble was because the world saw him as just another troublesome black boy. We learn how John saw things on a spiritual level, and how he saw the world and the things it had to offer him. Artists like Lecrae and Propaganda are amazing for their ability to speak up for injustices concerning black people. John Givez, however, he gives the most intimate, vivid, and explicit portrayal of what it's like to be black in an upbringing that many black people face, and how it feels to navigate through that upbringing with only a vague understanding of who God truly made you to be. If Lecrae and Propaganda were to represent the voice of the troubled black person in today's society, John would represent the soul, or the heart. He showed you the inner workings, the pain, the doubt, the cries that get bottled up and kept inside, all of the emotional ups and downs of life. John very handily represented the soul and all of the burdens that life brings upon said soul. With all of these things considered, I think I have a legitimate case for John Givez here. In CHH, he was the artist who demonstrated what it meant to make incredible strides of improvement in his music in a short amount of time, as seen with 4 Seasons and the ridiculously good album Soul Rebel. In CHH, he was the artist who not only generously donated his talent to other artists, but had an innate understanding of and synergy with said artists. The crowning example of what it means to be an amazing feature artist who's there for the feature, not for the spotlight. And finally, in CHH, John Givez represented the black man's soul with the utmost integrity. He never failed to skip the painful moments, nor did he neglect the passing moments of happiness. He connected with his listeners by intimately sharing real events of his past and how they led to where he is today. John Givez painted his canvas for his listeners with his own blood, and so every little detail is heartfelt and stricken with raw emotions. He portrayed the consequences of rebellion without cause and the potential of rebellion with a cause. That, my friends, is the legacy that John Givez has left behind. That's what John Givez has been and what he's done for CHH. Of course, this is all just my opinion, and I want to hear what you guys think of John Givez as an artist. Do you feel like he did anything or left any excellent examples for CHH? If you liked this video, do me a favor by leaving a like and hitting that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, guys, and until next time, peace out.
I tried to leave, but you told me stay. I toss and turn, cause underneath is a man to pray. I far from earn, you say believe in what you achieve.